The cost of getting a college education has gotten out of hand. In 2022, about 46 million Americans have student loan debt, totaling nearly $1.75 trillion in total debt. And to put that into perspective, that's somewhere between the size of Italy and Canada's total economy. So just a casual Canada's worth of student debt spread out mostly between 20 and 30-year-olds. As of 2022, the average student loan debt in America is $37,013, with the average monthly student loan payment being $300. And up until the pandemic relief measures, 11.1% of student loans were 90 days or more delinquent or were in default. Going to college nowadays can be incredibly expensive, but you might have figured out from talking to your parents that it hasn't always been that way, has it? So I decided to spend just a few hours, more like 15 hours, taking a look at historical college tuition data, inflation data, and income data, and running some calculations to find out what the cost of attending college is today in 2022 compared to the cost of going to college 30 years ago, which is when most of our parents would have been in college. And what I found was pretty mind-blowing to say the least. So stay tuned to find out the results, and if you haven't already, please like the video because it really helps out my channel and will push the video to a larger audience. Alright, so let's get into it. 30 years ago in 1992, when many of our parents would have been in college, the cost of 1 year of tuition at a public college was $4,410. This is adjusted for inflation, so I'm talking in terms of 2022 dollars. But if you're curious, back then the actual dollar amount they would have paid would have been $2,117. Fast forward to 2022, the 1 year cost of public college tuition has risen to $10,338. This means that attending public colleges now is 2.34 times more expensive than it was 30 years ago. But that's just for public colleges. Most colleges in the US are actually private institutions, and they generally cost a lot more. In 1992, the 1 year cost of private college tuition was $20,322 in 2022 dollars. Fast forward again to 2022, the 1 year cost of tuition at a private college has risen to $38,185, which is 1.88 times more than in 1992, so nearly twice as expensive now as it was 30 years ago. But this is where it gets really interesting. What if we compare the cost of college now versus 30 years ago from another angle? Most college students work a job to help pay for their college education, which is typically an on-campus job that pays minimum wage. When I was a freshman in college, I worked at the campus testing center making minimum wage, and although it didn't completely pay my college tuition at all, let me tell you, I saw some pretty entertaining stuff. One time there was this guy that we suspected was cheating on his test, so we were keeping a close eye on him from our cameras to see if he was using a cheat sheet or something. He must have suspected that we were onto him because we looked away for 1 second, and when we looked back, the sheet was gone. So we watched the recording back, and this guy had actually eaten his cheat sheet. It was so insane. But moving on from that, let's take a look at how expensive college is in terms of hours of work required at minimum wage. Back in 1992, the federal minimum wage was $4.25 an hour, meaning that a student attending a public college working year-round with only 2 weeks of vacation would have to work 10 hours a week, or 2 hours a day, 5 days a week to pay for college. This is in comparison to going to college today in 2022, where the minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. So a student attending a public college today would have to work about 29 hours a week, or nearly 6 hours a day, 5 days a week to pay for their college tuition. And this is all before taxes, and also just for public colleges. Like I said before, private colleges are generally quite a bit more expensive. So taking a quick look at those private college numbers, working at minimum wage, in 1992, you would have to work 46 hours a week, or 9.2 hours a day, 5 days per week to pay for college, which is already pretty crazy to do if you're a full-time student. And in 2022, you would have to work 105 hours a week, which is 21 hours per day, 5 days a week to pay for college, which is basically impossible. So if you're not working investment banking hours all year round, whilst also going to college full-time for 8 months of the year, then you're probably not graduating from a private college debt-free, unless you have scholarships or your parents are helping you out. So that's why seeing people like Dave Ramsey tell young people that they should just get a job during college so that they can graduate debt-free is kind of ridiculous because it's not really realistic. I mean, what about the out-of-state college students paying over $50,000 a year just in tuition? Their best shot of graduating close to debt-free is either getting a bunch of scholarships or being born into a rich family already. Now, we've established that, assuming that you don't have any scholarships or financial help from your relatives, you basically have to take out student loans if you're wanting to go to college in 2022. But how long on average would it take you to pay back those student loans today versus 30 years ago? Well, in 1992, the average amount of student loan debt owed per student was $10,200, and the average income of a college graduate with a bachelor's degree back then was $28,111. $37,000. So assuming you put 10% of your pre-tax income towards paying off your student loans every month, it would take you 4 years and 5 months to pay back your debt in full. Whereas in 2022, the average amount of student loan debt owed per student is $37,013, and the average income of a college graduate with a bachelor's degree is $55,260. Assuming again that you put 10% of your pre-tax income towards paying off your student loan every month, it would take you 8 years and 3 months to pay back your debt, which is nearly twice as long as it would have taken you 30 years ago. So a quick snapshot of all the numbers we've looked at so far. Going to college in 2022 compared to 30 years ago is about twice as expensive, would take 2 or 3 times more hours working at a minimum wage job to pay for, and your student loan debt would take almost twice as long to pay back. So now that you know all of the statistics, you might be asking yourself, why? Why has college gotten so much more expensive over the last few decades? Well, here are the 4 main reasons why college has gotten more expensive. The first reason college costs more than it used to is because of an increased demand for college, since more people now are seeking higher education. Going to college has become a lot more commonplace today than it was back when our parents were in college. Back in 1992, only 24% of men and 19% of women had completed 4 years of college. And today, it's 37% of men and 39% of women that have completed 4 years of college. So that's a massive increase in the amount of people choosing to go to college, which allows colleges to raise their prices because they know that they have enough people willing to pay those higher prices. And when it comes down to it, prices are controlled by supply and demand. And this is true for the price of everything. Take houses, for example. The main reason house prices have risen so incredibly high over the past 2 years is because there's been a lack of houses available on the market, aka supply has been low. Meanwhile, up until recently, there was a ton of people that were wanting to buy a home due to things like low interest rates, aka demand for houses was high. So the low supply and high demand for houses that were at play over the last 2 years pushed house prices up astronomically. Supply and demand is also the idea behind why people on TikTok and Twitter are saying that everyone needs to avoid buying gas from July 3rd to July 5th. Because they think that if no one buys gas for a few days, then the price of gas will crash. No idea if that will even work, but I guess we'll wait and see. I know I'd love to go back to $2 per gallon gas. But anyways, that's how supply and demand control prices. And in the case of college tuition, if there's more demand for a college education, then as long as everything else is kept equal, we're going to see a rise in college tuition costs. The second reason why college has gotten more expensive is because of how easy it has become to qualify for financial aid. The student loan system has made it increasingly easier for an 18-year-old that wants to go to college to be able to take out hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans, even if they don't have a credit score and wouldn't be able to qualify for loans on other things like houses or cars. Imagine we have one student that can't take out any student loans. They might be able to afford to pay a few $1,000s to go to college, but if that student were able to gain access to large amounts of student loans through federal aid, now they can probably afford to pay tens of thousands of dollars to go to college. Now, if that's the case for the majority of people, instead of just one person, colleges are able to once again raise prices, because now more people can afford to pay a lot more money to go to college. It also allows people that wouldn't normally be able to afford to go to college to now be able to go, which is a great thing, but it also has a con of once again increasing the demand for college and thus raising costs. The third reason why college has gotten more expensive is because of less higher education funding from states. In 2009, after the Great Recession, state governments started investing less in colleges because they were also facing an economic crisis and had other financial priorities, like healthcare and social security benefits. So they decided to cut tuition credits and other aid that they were providing to students. This left colleges with no choice but to make up the loss of the money they were getting from their state by increasing tuition costs. And now, even though most states' revenues have recovered since the recession, their funding for higher education still hasn't gotten back to what it was. And the last reason why college has gotten so expensive is because colleges have expanded their offerings. Most colleges have chosen to spend money on trying to improve the student experience in order to attract more students to enroll at their college. This includes things like hiring more faculty, building more dorms, and making other types of technological improvements. And of course, this is a cost that colleges have passed along to their students. But I hope you enjoyed this little analysis. Make sure you save this video for the next time your parents tell you about how they worked their way through college and graduated debt-free, because it's definitely harder to pay for college now than it was 30 years ago when our parents were attending. Also, I'd love to hear what you thought about this little analysis in the comments below, and also, I just started a new Instagram and would love to connect with you guys on there, so go give that a follow as well. But take care, and I'll see you in the next one.